At Rubber Band, we empower each other through positivity, kindness, and practical advice. Join a community of thousands of peers who understand the unique challenges you face. Rubber Band. Company agnostic, low ego, high empathy, always supportive.
Isn't it funny that as recruiters we talk about delivering a better candidate experience and more efficient recruitment processes, but yet we use tools and systems like ATSs to manage applicants when they come through, but give us no capability to engage and get updates from candidates throughout the recruitment process. That's still done by phone and email. And this is the exact problem that Job Tetris is solving. We've created the world's first job and candidate tracking solution to enable you to deliver a better process, more efficient and more transparent, and build on that relationship with candidates. We've partnered with Rubber Band to give you guys an exclusive look into the functions and features of the system during our first ever webinar. We look forward to seeing you there. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out.
Welcome, listeners, to today's episode of the Rubber Band podcast, where I am joined by guest Rob Brown. Now, before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that I live and work on, the Wadawurrung and Dja Dja Wurrung people. I recognise their continuing connection to the land and waterways. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and I would like to extend this to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Welcome, Rob Brown. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. And you are joining from somewhere a lot sunnier than where I am today in the miserable cold of Ballarat. Where are you joining from?
So I'm in Brisbane, on the bay in Manly, and pretty sunny and warm. So they call it Sunshine State for a reason, clearly.
How warm? How warm?
Is it 27 today. So yeah, it's pretty humid.
Take me there.
As a Londoner, I'm pretty. I wouldn't mind some colder weather actually.
Oh, really? We'll swap. You can come to Ballarat. This is the London weather here, right?
I have actually been to Ballarat.
You have? Would you go gold panning at Sovereign Hill?
Yes, during my backpacking days, did a day trip.
Oh, that's amazing. Oh, good to hear. Well, I'm really excited that we're having a Chinwag today. So, Rob, thanks again for joining. I can't wait to hear more about your journey and more about you as a human. And thank you for being so engaged in the Rubber Band community. You're, one of our banders that we love. Today's all about getting to know you and to hear all about your journey. And I always think the best place to start, Rob, is to go way back and hear about your childhood and growing up. And I hear a hint of an accent. So tell me about young Rob.
Yeah. So, like I said, Londoner, born and raised. Grew up in southwest London. Went to school there, university. I went to Bristol, so I did get out of the big smoke. Went to Bristol to uni there. I'm like I said, lived in London for the majority of my life, but done a lot of traveling. This is actually the third time I've been in Australia. I lived in Australia, so keep coming back, but obviously different places each time around. Yeah. Like I said, lived in London, worked in London, worked in Sydney, travelled, loved travelling. In fact, been to pretty much most continents. Well, I've been to every continent apart from South America. So big traveller. Spent 10 months traveling around the world after I left uni and after I had my first proper job, and back here again.
Okay. Well, I want to go back to school in London. Yep. What kind of a teenager were you, Rob?
So I was someone who didn't really love school. Very different to my younger brother, who was very academic and high flyer at school. But whereas for me, school was more about catching up with friends, playing sports, doing as little work as possible, much to my parents' dismay. But I mean, I went to a pretty big school in South London, very mixed school in terms of the pupils who went there came from all different parts of backgrounds, different parts of London. So I had some of my best friends had like 5 or 6 siblings and living in very different parts of London. Not slightly, I guess, harder lives and different backgrounds to where I came from. So that certainly shaped who I was as a person in terms of, surrounding myself with people who came from different backgrounds and had different childhoods. And it was a bit of a school of hard knocks at times as well. But I came out of it the other side, so survived. But it was. I think for me, school was more about relationships and meeting friends and enjoying it. Less so about the academics, but
same. Yeah. But I think what we learn there, like in terms of the people skills, and you even talk about people from diverse backgrounds, and I think that education is what makes us better HR professionals, right? Not the academics. So
absolutely,
I always look back on those times, and sometimes I think, oh gosh, if I would have applied myself, I could have been, gosh knows how successful I could have been, right? Because I'm a smart guy, you're a smart guy. But we did learn from that. And I always think at that age as well, 17 or 18 when you're finishing high school, and then you've got to make that big decision about where you want to take your career. It's such a young age to do so. We're so immature and we're not ready to make those sort of decisions, but we have to. Like, what did you decide to do from that point at high school? Did you decide to go to university or to enter the workforce?
Yeah, so I went straight out of school to uni. I did my degree in English literature. Why? Because that was probably the subject that I did the best at, and I enjoyed reading. Whether it was something like a classic, like a Tolstoy, or something more kind of present day. But again, I left school with not really a clue as to what I wanted to do as a career. I mentioned I love sport. I played a lot of football. Sorry, soccer. I played cricket. I rowed for my school. I enjoyed that side of things, but wasn't at a level where I could, kick that on to a professional career, or even looking at something like doing a sports science degree, for example. So I went to uni, did English because, like I said, I was good at it and I enjoyed it. And came out of uni with a bachelor's degree. But nothing. I didn't get a first, for example. It was, again, uni was like an extension of school, where it was about meeting people and enjoying it. And it was my first experience of living away from home. So, I left London and went to Bristol, which is, for those listeners who aren't from the UK, is probably a couple of hours drive away from London, but a big enough city that you could still enjoy life there, and there were opportunities, and I did a few part-time jobs here and there to help supplement the expenditure at the uni bar, the lifestyle. Exactly.
Well, tell me about those jobs. What was your very first job, Rob?
Oh, so my very first job was working at Pizza Hut.
Nice.
Pizza Hut delivery in Southwest London, East Sheen, Southwest London. So 16 was my first. I was how old I was when I did my first shift, and I went to the delivery side of things because I was hoping, I'd be able to drive the mopeds and stuff. But because at 16 you can drive a moped, get a license in England. So, but they changed their policy at the time that you had to be 18. So I was in the kitchen making the pizzas, taking the calls. And I did that up until about 18. So for the last couple of years of my school life, I was working there 2 or 3 nights a week, getting some money coming in.
Pizza Hut still, or is it to be avoided?
No, I still go. I haven't been to the one around the corner. But I still dabble with a Pizza Hut or a Domino's. But I like to think I make a better pizza than they
Oh,
do.
good to hear. So when you finished uni in Bristol, what did you do in terms of, first professional job? Where did you take your career from there?
So I moved back home, back to London, which was a difficult decision because a lot of my really close friends stayed in Bristol. But again, it was close enough that I could go up pretty much every weekend to see my friends. But I went back to London, and my first proper job was actually in recruitment. So,
cool. Right.
So it was for an outsourced recruitment company, quite a small business in Richmond upon Thames, which is again southwest London, close enough to my parents that I could jump on the bus or walk to work. And I joined them on a contract as an account executive, and their business model was, so they worked with like large blue chip companies, mainly banks. So again, for the listeners back in the UK, Royal Bank of Scotland, Aviva, which is a big insurance company, and then Orange mobile phones, which I'm not even sure still exist.
I don't think they're around anymore. No,
French telco company. So the company I worked for, effectively, if you submitted like a speculative application, you're like, I want to work for RBS or I want to work for Orange, you'd send your CV to an email address, or even back then they were dealing with paper CVs. So I'm showing my age now. And this company would effectively process all of those speculative applications, had a huge database where candidates were loaded in. But then we get requests through from the client. So RBS might say, we're looking for a relationship manager in Leeds. Can you send us X number of CVs in that location that match the criteria? So as an account executive, it was, I was processing these CVs, but then was getting these requests through from clients to match candidates with the job. And that was my first exposure to the world of recruitment. And I was there initially I was meant to be there for like 6 months, stayed for 2 years, ended up being an account manager and managing a team, which was really exciting. But as I'd gone straight from school, straight to uni, straight to work, I decided, as someone who loves travel, it was time for me to go and see the world. So after 2 years of doing that, I packed my bags and set off for 10 months around the world.
Wow. And then at what point, right? So you had that couple of years where you entered into the recruitment industry. It wasn't something that you would necessarily sort out, I suppose. Yep. It was one of those sort of roles that came about and you thought, oh, this might be cool. When was the point when you thought, do you know what? I think I could make a career out of recruitment. When did you decide I want to be a recruitment consultant?
So I think that it was, so as I mentioned, I went traveling and I went to Japan first, and I flew to Sydney from Tokyo, and went and lived in Bondi, like pretty much every Brit does when they arrive in Australia. So and started looking for a job because I had my savings, but I didn't really want to be eating into those whilst I was renting and enjoying life in Sydney as a 24-year-old. So I actually got a job in recruitment. So it was like I couldn't get away from it. It kept, I fly to the other side of the world, and I still got a job in recruitment. So I ended up working at the Royal North Shore Hospital in St Leonard's, working on senior medical recruitment. So I was in the HR team, but again, very different. So recruiting roles across all these different departments within the hospital. And again, I really enjoyed it because I was working with people from different backgrounds. They'd come from the UK, they'd come from South Africa, they'd come over from Canada, India, for example. And it's not for me in terms of that medical recruitment space, but I really enjoyed it. And when I was then doing the rest of my traveling, I had a lot of time to reflect and go, what do I enjoy? What am I looking to do next? And when I came back to the UK, I moved into the recruitment agency space because I was like, you know what, I did it for 2 years. It's different. Obviously, agency, there's a huge sales component and business development component. But I thought, look, I've done it for 2 years. I did it for 3 months on a working holiday visa in Australia. Give it a go. And it was, I guess, haven't looked back since. I mean, we're talking about starting out in recruitment in 2004, and 20 years later, I'm still here doing it.
I know. Exactly. It happens. You fall in love. What is it, do you think, for you that's made you fall in love with the industry? Because it feels like there was a little bit of convenience involved here. You got a job when you were traveling and then returned home and went back in there. So something made you go, do you know what? I absolutely love this. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing it for 20 years, right?
So for me, I think it's the people side of things. I mean, what I love about recruitment is you meet people from different countries, from different backgrounds, from different cultures who work in different jobs, and it's that human connection that you have with people, not just even on a kind of I'm trying to think here what the words are to use, but kind of just on a base level, you have these deeper connections. You're speaking to someone so many different stages, so many different times. You get to know this person so well through those conversations, from when they first apply to the job through to when you've offered them the role, but down the track 6, 12 months, years later, and that relationship is that those deep connections are what I enjoy. And like I said, meeting people from different walks of life. As someone who loves travel, I've met people from so many different parts of the world, and I don't think there's many jobs out there where you can have those connections with so many different people from so many different walks of life, from so many different cultures. And like I said, it's those really deep connections that you build that make the job what it is. And I think also knowing how big a part that you play in someone's life. Right. Because it is, I think when someone moves from one company to another company, or leaves one job and goes to another job, these are huge life-changing decisions, and you're playing a part in that. So knowing that the role that you play in someone's life, but also the success of a company, is, for me, the biggest appeal to what we do.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Now I want to go. So you've returned to London. We've still got a little bit of your journey to continue, because you've had such an interesting career in recruitment and talent acquisition. So talk me through the career from there. Where did you go from that point?
Right. So, I mentioned, came back to London, worked in the agency side of things, did that for 2.5 years. But I think I got a bit sick of the targets and the bell and the cold calling. And look, I'm not shy. I didn't shy away from sales, because I think that as a TA, an internal recruiter, there's still quite a significant part of what we do that is sales based. You're selling an opportunity to a candidate, you're selling a company, a culture, a brand to a candidate. So that doesn't disappear. But for me, I wanted to work for a business, work for a company, an organization that I had a connection to, that my values were aligned with their values. I believed in the products the product that they sold. So I left the agency world, took a bit of a roundabout route to get into internal recruitment, because it was a bit of a catch 22 situation where, you know, you want to work in internal recruitment, but all the internal recruitments wanted you to have internal recruitment experience to get into it.
So, when I did as well, exactly the same. It was the same here. Yeah.
So I had to, like I said, I took a bit of a detour. I actually went into HR organizational development. So I worked for the Metropolitan Police in London, so which is the UK's biggest police force, and did two really interesting projects. One of them was actually working on the staffing for the 2012 London Olympics. So looking at how the police force would make sure that, you know, they had enough police officers in the right places for the right events. You know, it's the biggest sporting event in the world, and Brisbane's got it in 2032, I should say. So very exciting. But working on that, which had a recruitment component to it, because it was looking at kind of that resource management, which was my first real exposure to resource management. And then working on a restructure program for the largest unit within the Met, which again had some recruitment elements to it. It was designing recruitment processes, job descriptions, because the whole organization was changing in terms of role profiles, how we needed to resource that particular unit. And we're talking, you know, 40,000 employees.
Jeez.
So not a small change program. So yeah, but you know, behind the scenes was still keen to get into my first TA role, and you know, I got a job with the largest insurance company in the UK. It was called RBS Insurance, but now Direct Line Group. So that was my first role, and a great role. I mean, the company was splitting away from a huge financial services business, so we were building a business. So we were building new teams, we were building new functions. My first project was to recruit the procurement function for this company, which was a huge project across multiple different sites in the UK, and then supporting marketing as well with a restructure which involved hiring 30, 40 new heads, working directly with the chief marketing officer on that. And that was my first in-house role, and you couldn't have, I think, landed a better role in the market at the time, because, like I said, we were all new. We had a new TA team, we had new managers, we had new systems. I got to test out new systems, new ATSs, and build teams. And it was a great first gig, and would have stayed, but my wife dragged me kicking and screaming to Sydney, so I had to leave that one.
Yeah, and those build roles, I think all of us that have been in those roles, you never forget them, right? They're chaotic, they're incredibly busy, but the reward at the end of it, because you look back and you go, wow, look what we did. And they're amazing. And they're few and far between. Like, I had a build role with Flybys in my previous role, and I get it. Like, it's just one of those career-defining moments. And so return to Sydney, back into in-house?
So moved to Sydney end of 2012, and again, managed to get a really great role with in the insurance industry. So it was a mat cover role as a TA manager for Marsh. So they're a global insurance brokerage, and that was a really interesting role because it was my first opportunity to manage a team, have my first in-house role in Australia, and it was again part of a bigger organisation, Marsh & McLennan, who are also Mercer, which I think I'm sure a lot of listeners will know who Mercer are as a company and what they do in the HR space. So really interesting role. Like I said, getting to manage a team, having my own portfolio of hires to look after, working with senior level stakeholders, but also working on some really cool global projects.
And insurance, right? You're talking my language. And funnily enough, around that time, I was an insurance agency recruiter that was trying to knock your door down, trying to get work. So, we probably crossed paths at one stage.
Probably. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And then from Marsh, have you had roles after that?
Yeah. So after Marsh, I went to HSBC. Again, massive brand in the UK. Everyone knows who HSBC are. They're on every high street, or they were, obviously in the retail banking side of things. It's the same here, isn't it? Trying to find your local branch for your bank is getting harder and harder. But worked for HSBC for a couple of years. Went to PwC after that, which was a great role, great team. I think each role that I moved to, the size of the TA function got bigger as well. So, at Marsh, there was myself, a couple of other recruiters in Australia, but at PwC, the TA machine was massive. We had the grad recruitment team, we had experienced hires, we had employer branding, we had coordinators, we had sources. So that was my first, I think, experience of working in a very structured TA function, and you just learn so much from the people around you in terms of the fellow recruiters. And I mean, it's a brand that is everyone knows who PwC are, what they do, but the competition for talent was so fierce in terms of you're going up against the other big four, Deloitte, EY, KPMG, for really top talent. And it was also an experience where I got to not only recruit here in Australia, but work on projects in the region. So working with stakeholders in Singapore as well, which I had been able to do at HSBC with working with colleagues in Hong Kong on branding projects, as well as process improvement initiatives as well. So really exciting. And then I decided I wanted to go back home. So we moved back to the UK in 2017. Okay.
Wow, so, you like to travel.
We go back and forth. Yeah, well, exactly. I think it's harder each time moving back and forth. So moved back to the UK and went into a very different industry there. So worked in the drinks industry. Pernod Ricard, who the brand, the name itself, not many people know, but they know the brands that they own. So Absolute Vodka, Mum Champagne, Chivas, whiskey, Jameson. So they own all of those brands. And again, that was another build project. So working on their global travel retail business, building that business up. So building a new marketing team. There was no HR team, there's no finance, there was no technology team. It was working on all of those projects, building all of those teams up, doing a lot of international hiring. So hiring people from Hong Kong, hiring people from Miami, different parts of the EMEA region. So recruiting roles in the Nordics, for example. And that was my first role of really working as a fully fledged international recruiter, where you're speaking to candidates in all over the world. You're hiring people from different continents. You're working on relocation packages. I think the level of complexity of the hires was getting more and more complex, and I loved it more and more and more. And I think, again, going back to the traveler in me and the person who enjoys speaking to stakeholders, to candidates from different parts of the world, it was a dream job.
And then, from there, some really, really amazing roles and really amazing brands like, Expedia and, I see and Mind Body, and you were doing work with Work 180 and then Audley Travel. What I really love about your experience, Rob, and then, landing in your Nelson Fin Services role is that it just spans so many different industries. And I think that's how we learn more as recruiters as well. I know, some recruiters that have, struggled to get out of a sector that maybe has scaled up at a certain point and scaled down? And, I'm talking technology recruitment, right?
Yep.
There's been a lot of people that have struggled through that, the ups and downs of,
I've been there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's really important, and I agree with this as well. I try to make sure that I don't, pigeonhole my career into a certain space where I've come out of insurance recruitment in the past. I've tried to get that greater variety and depth in terms of my experience. Rob, I'm really keen to find out what your biggest lessons have been throughout your career.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. I think that the biggest lesson that I've learned, and that has been from the experience of working in global companies and as I mentioned earlier, recruiting roles across borders, is I think being able to adjust, being agile. I mean, you're speaking with people who come from different countries, from different cultures. They see the same situation very differently. And I think being able to adjust your anything from your communication style to your approach. When I was at Pernod Ricard, which I mentioned was probably the first role I'd had where I was really in a global role, the head of L&D and talent at the time gave me a book called The Culture Map, and recommend it to anyone I recommend it to anyone because I think that it really drives into that mindset of, you've got people who, like I said, will be in the same situation, but they will analyze it in a very different way to how you will. And anything from how you phrase a sentence, or how you write an email, or how you respond, it can actually make or break a situation. It can mean that a candidate says yes or no to an offer. It can mean a hiring manager decides to progress with a candidate or not. And going back to that diversity of thought and how we see the world, the biggest lesson I've learned is being very kind of mindful of how you approach those situations and trying to put yourself in the shoes of the person you're speaking to, because ultimately what we do in talent acquisition is a customer. It's a customer facing position, whether it's an internal customer, your hiring manager, your HR colleagues, the C-suites, or it's an external customer, your candidates who. And I think that, like I said, being able to be agile and look at things, how the individual who you're speaking with is looking at it is really important. And also, I think that nothing should shock you, nothing should surprise you, and nothing should shock you in recruitment, because you can plan meticulously your day, which I think is really important. And I have a to-do list, and I write my to-do list the evening or later in the afternoon for the next day, but we all know that
it's out the window.
24 hours later it looks completely different to how it did. So nothing should surprise you, for sure.
That's really great. I'm gonna say that's our final piece of advice for the audience, because I like that. I think that's advice that I would give to anyone that's considering a career in recruitment as well. Now, finally, I understand you're looking for that next challenge. So just let the audience know the kind of things you might be interested in and how to reach out to you, Rob, because you've got such amazing experience. I'm sure you're going to get quite a few phone calls after this. So how do they reach out?
So, looking for my next role in TA, whether it's as a TA manager or a senior level TA partner, please get in touch through LinkedIn. I think that for me, it's, like I said, that there's so many great opportunities out there at the moment, some great companies with some great products. And for me, it's working for a company that cares as much as I do, I think, about things such as candidate experience, about diversity and inclusion, and has got some exciting work ahead of them. And if you're looking for an experienced recruiter who's, like I said, got that global experience, please get in touch.
Jump on Rob. Rob's great. What experience? What an amazing experience you've got, mate. I really appreciate you joining for a Chinwag today. I've learned a lot, and I feel like I've really got to know you. So I appreciate you joining today, and you make sure you get out there and enjoy some of that Brisbane sunshine, because I'm sitting here in the freezing cold, jealous as hell.
I will do. Absolutely. Thanks again.
Enjoy. Thanks, Rob. Take